Good morning, my friends. This is Paul, and this video is brought to you by a Myers-Briggs ISTJ. So therefore, oh no, actually I just realized that I was an ESTJ when I first learned about Myers-Briggs. So okay, I guess I made a mistake there. Let's start this over from the top. Oh. No, I'm sorry, folks. More technical difficulties arose. Someone here is saying that I'm an ISFJ. Okay, that makes sense. You know, they have introverted sensing and extroverted intuition, just the judging functions are different. Okay, well, fair. I agree with them. Okay, so this video is brought to you by an ISF... No, this person here says that I'm an ENFP. Wait a minute. How does that compute? ENFPs have different judging functions than an ISFJ does. Not to mention that the sensing and intuition are in different spots. How can both of these people, both claiming to know Myers-Briggs, are both correct? It's so bizarre. So, as you can probably imagine by the title and by this introduction, I have been mistyped as almost every single type in the Myers-Briggs system, with every single person claiming to be accurate. So the question is, why do I get mistyped? Now, I know that I'm not the only person, but it feels like I've gotten the most combinations out of anyone who's mistyped. Like, usually when you take anyone else, they usually only get one or two possible combinations. Like, you might get someone who claims to be an introvert, but then because that person happens to be outgoing in his or her videos, they'll say that person has to be an extrovert because introverts can't be talkative. Like, have you never read the dictionary, people? Now, I have done several takes on this subject, and as you can probably imagine, all of them have been failures because I just couldn't figure out the right words to convince every single personality type that I'm not a total lunatic. Because certain personalities will say, yeah, of course I'm going to agree with you, Paul. Others are going to be like, no, that doesn't make logical sense, and your words don't compute. Because, and I'm like, I didn't think that far in advance, guys. Like, but that in and of itself is going to make my credibility seem lousy. So I thought that the best way to tackle this issue would be to talk about why I think I'm mistyped. That way, no one can argue with that. It's just my thoughts. I'm not trying to be a Myers-Briggs type. I'm not trying to exhibit any function stack. I'm just looking at myself and analyzing, okay, why do people seem to not be able to come to a common consensus? And I think the bottom line is that they don't realize that I'm Catholic. I honestly think that after all of these miscommunications, I think that's the ultimate deciding factor. Because being a Catholic, and by extension being a Christian, because I know there are non-Catholics watching this, there are certain rules that we have to follow that don't always line up with the traditional Myers-Briggs system. There are certain truths that are really hard for mainstream audiences to accept. Like, for example, when St. Paul says sodomites will never enter the kingdom of heaven. The LGBT people are like, you're telling me that being gay is a sin? No, it is not. But that's how they would interpret it. And so therefore they might say, well, because you're being insensitive to the minority, you must be a thinking type because you're not thinking about the collective feelings of others, when it could just be that that's what the Bible says. Now, of course, that verse is easily misinterpreted, but that's a different story. I will just tell my audience, do your research, look into how does the Catholic Church interpret the Bible verses instead of taking it at face value 21st century reasoning. Like, you expect these ancient manuscripts to have the same thought as someone nowadays? You got to do more research. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. The point is that you can take several different examples and you'll always come across as something that you're not. I know of a priest who thought that, I believe he said he thought he was an INFP, but yet he is very rigid in his routine for saying Mass. Why? Because that's what priests are supposed to do. They're supposed to say Mass the same every single way. They're supposed to have a rigid structure because that's what priests are demanded of them. Not only that, but he was a Well, there's a difference between a diocesan priest and an order priest, and he was the order priest, meaning that he was part of a group of friars, and they have a certain way of doing things, but that doesn't seem like a perceiving thing to do. Perceivers like to go with the flow, and they like to do things as they come along. They don't like a strict structure. But yet he was very structured, and yet he claimed that he was an INFP. So in that respect, the perceiving element of his type would be inaccurate because of his Catholic beliefs. Conversely, a lot of people seem to think that I am a feeling type because I like to consider how other people feel. I'm not always good at grasping it naturally, but it's something that I've worked on developing because there are countless verses in the Bible that talk about how God wants us to be loving and considerate of one another. There's a verse that says, love your neighbor as yourself, and Jesus even went so far as to say this is the golden rule, or do unto others what you would have them do to you. So if I wouldn't want people to be an insensitive jerk to me, then I don't want to be an insensitive jerk to others. So there are certain things within the Catholic Church that come across as misinterpretation. However, looking past all of that Catholicism, I still get mistyped, even if I have my big blue blurb at the start of every video, the Catholic Gaming Nerd. Unless you're suggesting that my audience doesn't know how to read. I mean, they could, for all I know. But the bottom line is that people still misinterpret my type. And I believe that's because they don't take into account function development, they don't take into account what my innermost thoughts are, and they don't know me. I think the third pointer is especially relevant here, because a lot of people seem to think that by observing a person's communication style in a YouTube video, it means that they automatically know that person, even though that's only a very small fraction of the person's personality. You take actors, they might play a certain character, but when you see that actor in an interview, it's like, whoa, he or she is a totally different person now. But even then, they might be nervous, or they might be putting on a I want to be approachable persona for those interviews. So you still can't say you know the true actor. That's why I really respect YouTubers like Eric Wen. He doesn't just make snap judgment decisions. He looks at several different interviews and several different clips and tries to see if there's a particular pattern that the actor or actress continuously brings up. But even then, he always says, I am reasonably confident. He doesn't try to claim that he has the right answer. So I also think that pretty much everyone I know that mistypes me are people that aren't my friends, that they just either watch my videos or they've seen me in a collaboration with another YouTube, and they come to a conclusion based on very limited information. So I think that most people that know me in person, I think they know my Myers-Briggs type more than anyone, because they see how I'm like when I'm in this unfiltered, just being myself type of mindset that I would say the majority of people are when they're around their friends. When you're around your friends, you tend to let your guard down considerably more. You tend to just say, you know what, when I'm around you, because I trust you so much, I am willing to be myself. And once you get the person to admit that, then you're realizing where the true function stack lies. So I think, for example, when I went on vacation to meet Isabel, I started to realize just how much the tertiary introverted feeling and the dominant introverted sensing really shows up. I noticed that she and my travel buddy Teresa, who's an ESFP, they would both always want to experiment with the food. We went to Golden Corral twice, the first 2 meals that we had. And I thought, oh good, that'll be the natural de facto thing that we do. But they were both like, no, we want to go to these other restaurants and try something new because all this routine is a bit too much. And I had to grit my teeth and be like, well, I am technically outnumbered, but if I had my way, I'd go to a traditional restaurant. And while we were on our way to go visit her, we went to Burger King and McDonald's every single time except for the last time when Teresa said, Paul, I can't take any more of this. Whereas I was like, oh, you can't? Oh, bummer. I was enjoying the repetition. And then I also noticed that compared to those two, my facial expressions were relatively lacking. I tried really hard to smile and emote, but it didn't seem like it came as naturally as it did for them, whereas they're just like bouncing off of each other's energy. I would be more even-keeled and relaxed. Now, in the videos that we took of each other, I did try to like insert a few jokes and be silly, but I don't think that's enough to automatically assume that a person knows my Myers-Briggs type, because I'd like to think that I've grown up in a family of jokesters. Well, more specifically, a generational family, because my dad, he likes to tell corny jokes. His dad liked to tell even cornier jokes. My other grandpa liked to tell even cornier jokes, and who knows what happened farther along down the line. So I think I just got that gene passed down to me. But that doesn't automatically mean that I have dominant intuition, because from my understanding, dominant extroverted intuition likes to constantly seek new possibilities and new experiences, and I don't like doing that. I very much like to go with what is familiar and to keep my routine and to really try not to experiment a whole lot. Like, as I've gotten older, I've realized that there's merit in not doing everything exactly the same. But I still like to have a general routine. So for instance, I might not do exactly the same thing every time I wake up, but I'll say like, okay, around this time is when I usually like to take a nap on my days off. Around this time is when I like to eat lunch. And then usually I have the same things for each meal, depending on my budget, of course. But generally speaking, when I eat my food, I like eat things in order of I like this the least to I like this the most. Now, I'm not trying to defend my type too much. I'm just trying to say that if you didn't know me really well, you wouldn't pick up on those clues. Whereas Isabel and I, not only did we visit each other, well, I visited her on my vacation, but she and I have also talked on the comment section, on Twitter messages, on the phone, and she's had time to observe me in a variety of settings, including a setting where I actually cried. And so she's been able to see the function stack in several different scenarios and come to a general conclusion based on consistent patterns that I exhibited. Granted, I'm a pattern-oriented person to begin with, but not pattern in the intuitive sense of trying to see vibes, but more of I don't tend to vary my routines very much. Now, as to why I think people mistype me, again, if you look at every single type combination, I can see that being possible if you consider the unique circumstances in which the typing was given. So for example, let's say a person watches an interview with another YouTuber and says, oh, I think Paul is an ENFJ. I don't know how you would get to that conclusion because their function stack is all over the place compared to mine, but whatever. Let's just play devil's advocate and say that they're right. Obviously, when you're in an interview, you don't want to be this boring stick-in-the-mud type of person. You want to be presentable to a certain degree. You want people to take you seriously because otherwise they'll click off the video. So as much as I like being myself, I also want people to watch the interview. So there's going to be a part of me that's going to try to put on my best self. When you go to a job interview, for example, you don't want, like, say an ISTP goes for a job interview. They're not going to say, like, all right, interview person, let's just get this over with because I've got better things to do. No, that would be stupid. A true person of any Myers-Briggs type going into an interview is going to want to dress professionally, act professionally, and answer questions to a certain degree to make sure that they get the job. In the same way, if I'm doing a YouTube interview, I'm going to want to present myself. I'm still going to want to be myself, but I'm also going to want to engage the audience to a certain degree. So in that respect, you could say that that's a scenario where I would have to put on a different personality than what I'm used to. In the same way, I might also be around someone who just takes life way too seriously, and I'd just be getting so bored of that that I'd be like, I have to crack a joke here or I'm going to go insane. Now that's more of a scenario where you can take my personality type and say, okay, he's not feeling external pressure. He's not feeling obligated by any religious system. So what is his natural defense mechanism? What is going on here? And I think that generally speaking, I'm the type of person that if I am annoyed by something, I don't usually like to sugarcoat it. I like to kind of just say whatever is on my mind, whether people like it or not. Now, I've gotten better at least having some amount of a filter, but generally speaking, it tires me out to try to censor my speech too much. I like to say, like, no, I think that this is stupid and arbitrary as much as possible. Now, that may come across as rude to some people. I try really hard to phrase it in such a way that it comes across more neutral, but some types are just naturally sensitive, and I think that anyone of any personality type would eventually just say, enough is enough. I can't keep pandering, is that a word? To all of these people that are overly sensitive. These people need to get help. Although I think that's more likely for an extroverted thinker to make that kind of statement than an extroverted feeler, because extroverted feelers, they like to think about the feelings of the group. And I hate going by the group. A lot of times I deliberately try to make my YouTube videos as different and unique as possible to make sure that they are not the same as everyone else's. But at the same time, they're the same as videos that I have done in the past because I like my familiar routines. So if you were to go back and look at, I hope you don't, because I've definitely improved since then, but if you were to hypothetically go back and look at my old videos, you'll notice that I still use relatively the same structure. Sure, my editing and my audio equipment has gotten better over the years, but the same general structure still applies. I still do something very similar to the, hey everyone, this is Paul. Maybe not word for word exactly the same, but generally speaking, it's that general format. I usually like to say thank you for watching, because again, that's polite, common courtesy, people. And I also like to keep a relatively consistent upload schedule. Not because any of you need it, but because that's what I like. I like being able to say every 3 days, sometimes every 4 days if I have a really busy, not so much busy, but tiring week, then maybe I'll go a little bit longer. But I like the feeling of having every 3 days having a new upload. No one is forcing me to do it. I'm not trying to please you guys. In fact, more often than not, the videos that I pump out during that time are videos that do terribly. But I say, this is what I want to do, and I want to get my thoughts out. And so, obviously, I know that most people watching this probably still aren't going to be able to come to a consensus as to what Myers-Briggs type I am. They'll probably look at all of the examples that I've mentioned how I feel and say that is something that a feeling type would say. And to them I say, yeah, because ISTJs have tertiary feeling. It means it's good enough, but it could be developed. And I'd like to think that I've developed my inferior and tertiary functions relatively well. I think extroverted intuition is probably most likely still at the bottom because I really don't like entertaining possibilities. Sure, I like saying silly jokes and silly things, but I also think any type can do that, although I do think it's more likely for an extroverted intuitive to do that than an introverted intuitive, because if you watch every interaction I've ever had with someone who has introverted intuition in the top 2 functions, you'll notice that they're always the one that are going along with their like predetermined script and ideas, and I'm always the one trying to make them laugh and be caught off guard. So I think that's just a trait that everyone with extroverted intuition has, but the ISTJs who are more persnickety might not do that as much as I do. Whereas I have observed other ISTJs who haven't developed their functions and said, I don't like that. And at the end of the day, if you guys want to disagree, fine. Like, There could be an INTP watching this who analyzes this way more than I even analyze myself and say, I can still list all of the ways that you're wrong, Paul. And to which I say, well, that's your personality type, whatever. It's not like knowing my personality type is one of the 10 commandments or anything like that. Like, it shouldn't be taken that seriously, guys. But I do think that the people that have the most right to be able to say what type I really am are, one, the people that know me, two, the people that have studied the functions more than the letters, and three, the people that have observed me in a variety of situations. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comment section why you think I keep getting mistyped as various types. And do you think that postmodernism is okay, and therefore I can be an ISTJ and an ISFJ and an ENFP and an ENFJ and an ESTJ and an INTP and everything in between? Do you think all of these realities are simultaneously possible, or do you think there's only one truth? Let me know down in the comment section. Before I sign off, I know this is annoying to you guys, but I gotta give credit where credit is due. It's time to give thanks to my Patreon audience. I want to give an epic-tastic shout out to my top tier patron, Matthew Rakowski. Especially thank you for actually going through what you paid for and suggesting a video game for me to play. Thank you also to my other patrons, Scooter Doodle Splatcat and Sploon Ghost. Your continued support means so much to me. And I'm not just saying that to be like YouTubery. I'm saying that because I am in a really difficult financial situation and you guys are helping me out a ton. And if any of you want to support me as well, I hope I remember to put it in the description. I know that doesn't sound very ISTJ, but I'm so used to not doing that that I have to get into the routine of making that regular. So link will be in the description, or maybe you can just remember to search up my Patreon. Well, is that even... Well, anyway. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you all have a great day. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye.